Good evening. This is James Carter, alongside Kate Vincent. We're coming to you live from Last Signal Radio with what can only be described as the most extraordinary story in human history. Reports are flooding in from around the globe, and I need to emphasize that while this sounds impossible, we have confirmation from multiple independent sources across 6 continents. At approximately 6:47 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, scientists at CERN in Switzerland detected what they're calling an anomaly in the fundamental structure of reality itself.
James, I've been a journalist for 17 years, and I never thought I'd be sitting here saying these words. But people need to understand what's happening right now. Families across the world are gathering around their radios, their phones, trying to make sense of reports that our reality, everything we've ever known, might not be what we thought it was. The initial discovery came from particle collision experiments, but what followed has shaken every scientific institution on Earth. We're hearing from frightened people in London, Tokyo, Sao Paulo, and right here in New York who are seeing things, experiencing glitches in their everyday reality.
Let me provide the technical details as we understand them at this moment. The CERN team was conducting routine experiments with the Large Hadron Collider when their instruments detected repeating patterns in quantum fluctuations, patterns that shouldn't exist in a naturally occurring universe. Dr. Rebecca Morrison, the lead physicist who first identified the anomaly, described these patterns as resembling computational processes, like the rendering algorithms used in advanced computer simulations. Within 30 minutes of this discovery, observatories in Chile, Hawaii, and South Africa confirmed they were detecting identical patterns in cosmic background radiation.
And it's not just the scientists, James. We're receiving calls from ordinary people who are witnessing what they describe as visual distortions, moments where the world around them seems to freeze or duplicate. A woman in Melbourne called our station 20 minutes ago, crying, telling us that she watched her husband's face pixelate for 3 seconds before returning to normal. A traffic camera in downtown Chicago captured footage of an entire city block flickering like a corrupted video file. These images are circulating online right now, and while we can't verify their authenticity, the sheer volume of similar reports from unconnected sources across the globe is deeply unsettling.
The scientific community is in an emergency session. We have confirmation that the National Academy of Sciences, the Royal Society in London, and equivalent institutions in France, Germany, Japan, China, and Russia have all convened crisis meetings in the past hour. The White House has released a brief statement acknowledging the reports and urging calm, but notably, they have not denied the possibility that these findings represent something unprecedented. The statement from Press Secretary Williams reads, and I quote, "The administration is monitoring the situation closely and coordinating with international partners and the scientific community to understand the nature of these phenomena."
I can tell you that here in New York City, we're seeing the first signs of public reaction. Traffic on the Brooklyn Bridge has come to a standstill as drivers have abandoned their vehicles. Our reporter Sarah Chin is near Times Square, and she's describing scenes of thousands of people standing in the streets, many on their phones, some crying, others appearing to be in shock. Churches, mosques, and synagogues across the 5 boroughs are reporting capacity crowds as people seek answers, comfort, or perhaps just a sense of community in this impossible moment. Emergency services are being overwhelmed with calls, though officials stress that there is no immediate physical danger at this time.
We're now 1 hour into this crisis, and the data continues to accumulate. The Massachusetts Institute of Technology has published preliminary findings confirming the CERN results. Their quantum computing laboratory detected what they describe as boundary conditions in physical constants, mathematical limitations that suggest our universe operates within defined parameters, much like a simulation running within specific computational constraints. Professor Michael Zhang at MIT told Reuters, and I'm reading from The Wire here, that the evidence suggests reality may be processed rather than spontaneous, calculated rather than infinite.
I need to share something personal for a moment because I think it speaks to what millions of people are feeling right now. My daughter is 9 years old. She's at home with my mother tonight, and I called them 15 minutes ago. My daughter asked me if this means her life isn't real, if her friends aren't real, if the love we share isn't real. I didn't have an answer for her, James. How do you explain to a child that everything she knows might be part of some vast computational system? How do any of us process this?
Kate, I think that question is at the heart of what humanity is grappling with right now. The philosophical implications are staggering, but let me focus on what we know factually. Additional evidence is emerging from multiple disciplines. Geneticists at Stanford University have identified what they're calling compression artifacts in human DNA, sections of genetic code that appear to be optimized for efficiency rather than evolved through natural selection. Neuroscientists in Germany have published findings showing that human consciousness operates in discrete time intervals, approximately 40 milliseconds per perception cycle, rather than as a continuous stream. This matches precisely what you'd expect if consciousness were being rendered in computational frames.
And we're getting reports from around the world of what people are calling glitches becoming more frequent and more visible. In Singapore, witnesses report seeing identical strangers, not twins, but what appear to be duplicated people walking through different parts of the city. In Buenos Aires, dozens of people have recorded video of the sunset replaying itself, the sun setting, then resetting to its position 10 minutes earlier and setting again. I'm looking at this footage now on the monitors here in our studio, and I cannot explain what I'm seeing. It defies everything we understand about how the world works.
We're now receiving confirmation that major stock exchanges worldwide have suspended trading. The New York Stock Exchange, NASDAQ, London Stock Exchange, Tokyo Stock Exchange, and Hong Kong Stock Exchange have all ceased operations indefinitely. The Federal Reserve has announced emergency measures, though it's unclear what monetary policy means in a world where the fundamental nature of reality is in question. We're also hearing that international flights are being grounded across Europe and North America as aviation authorities assess whether navigation systems can be trusted if reality itself is unstable.
James, I'm being told we have a statement from the United Nations. Secretary General Amara Okonkwo is speaking now from emergency headquarters in New York. She's calling for global unity and calm, stating that whatever the truth of our existence may be, human suffering is real, human connection is real, and our responsibility to one another remains unchanged. It's a powerful message, but I can see from social media that panic is spreading. In Paris, the Louvre has been stormed by crowds demanding to see if the art is real. In Cairo, there are reports of riots near government buildings as people demand answers their leaders cannot provide.
We're 2 hours into this crisis now, and I need to report the first confirmed casualties. Authorities in Mumbai, India, report that stampedes in several crowded market districts have resulted in at least 47 deaths and more than 200 injuries as people fled in panic after witnessing widespread reality distortions. Similar incidents are being reported in Lagos, Nigeria, where at least 23 people have died in a crush outside the National Mosque. These are preliminary numbers, and they're likely to rise. Emergency services in both cities are struggling to respond as their communication networks become unstable.
This is heartbreaking, James. We're also receiving reports from hospitals across the United States of a surge in mental health emergencies. Psychiatric wards in Los Angeles, Houston, and Atlanta are at capacity with patients experiencing acute psychological breaks as they struggle to process what this means for their understanding of reality. Dr. Jennifer Woods, Chief of Psychiatry at Johns Hopkins Hospital in Baltimore, told our affiliate station that they're seeing everything from dissociative episodes to complete catatonic states in people who simply cannot reconcile this information with their sense of self.
The technical analysis continues to evolve. Scientists at the European Space Agency have been analyzing satellite data and have discovered that GPS coordinates occasionally produce impossible results. Locations that exist mathematically, but not in physical space. What they're calling null zones. Additionally, the Hubble Space Telescope and the James Webb Space Telescope have both detected identical star patterns in opposite directions of the observable universe, patterns so complex that the probability of them occurring naturally is effectively zero. This suggests that distant regions of space may be copies or templates Exactly what you would expect in a simulated environment, trying to fill an enormous space efficiently.
And closer to home, people are reporting personal experiences that are deeply disturbing. We've had dozens of callers describe experiencing déjà vu so intense and specific that they can predict events seconds before they happen, as if they're witnessing a loop or a reset. Others report seeing wireframe outlines around objects when they're extremely tired or stressed, as though the rendering of reality is becoming visible when the system is under strain. A high school teacher in Portland called to say that her entire class of 30 students simultaneously experienced the exact same false memory of an event that never happened, which she believes was a data synchronization error.
3 hours in now, and we are seeing the beginning of infrastructure failures. Power grids in sections of Berlin, Madrid, and Rome have experienced cascading failures that engineers cannot explain through conventional means. The blackouts appear to be propagating in geometric patterns rather than following the physical topology of the electrical networks. In Berlin alone, an estimated 1.2 million people are without power. There are reports of backup systems failing to engage, and in some cases, electrical equipment behaving in ways that violate known physical laws, drawing power from nowhere or operating without any identifiable energy source.
The human cost continues to mount, James. We have confirmation now of a major disaster in Jakarta, Indonesia. A 40-story residential tower has collapsed, but witnesses describe something that makes no sense. They say the building didn't fall due to structural failure, but rather seemed to disappear floor by floor from the top down, as if it were being deleted. Indonesian authorities report at least 300 people were inside. Rescue operations are underway, but the debris field is unlike anything emergency responders have encountered. Some survivors are being pulled from rubble that appears and disappears intermittently.
I need to emphasize that we're dealing with a complete breakdown of our understanding of physical reality. Additional reports from CERN indicate that the anomalies are intensifying. They're now detecting what Dr. Morrison describes as access attempts, as if whatever system is running our reality is being probed or hacked from outside. The quantum fluctuations have evolved into coherent signals, patterns that some researchers believe may be communication attempts. A team at MIT is trying to decode these signals, but the mathematics involved is beyond current human understanding. We're dealing with dimensional equations that require variables we don't have names for.
I'm looking at footage from Sao Paulo, Brazil, where an estimated 2 million people have gathered in the streets. Some are praying, some are rioting, but most are simply standing together, holding each other, crying. This is a city of 12 million people confronting the possibility that their lives, their histories, their loved ones who have died, everything might be part of an artificial construct. Religious leaders from various faiths are trying to address their congregations, but there's no scripture for this. No theological framework that prepared anyone for the possibility that God might be a programmer and creation might be code.
We're receiving updates on the casualty figures. In addition to the deaths in Mumbai and Lagos, we now have reports of at least 96 people dead in Mexico City, where several subway trains collided after their navigation systems produced contradictory location data. In Seoul, South Korea, a high-rise fire has claimed at least 43 lives after emergency systems failed to activate. The fire appeared to spread in impossible patterns, moving against the wind and jumping between buildings without any physical connection. Firefighters report that water from their hoses occasionally passes through flames without effect, as if the fire exists on a different layer of reality.
We're 4 hours into this, and social media is showing us the full spectrum of human response. There are viral videos of people proposing marriage, saying they don't care if it's a simulation, they want to spend whatever time or processing cycles they have with the person they love. There are images of strangers embracing in the streets of Toronto, of musicians in New Orleans playing jazz on street corners while the world processes this revelation. But there's also violence. Stores are being looted in Atlanta and Detroit. There are reports of people settling old scores, as if conventional morality no longer applies if nothing is real.
The military situation is developing. We have confirmation that armed forces in the United States, Russia, China, and several NATO countries have been placed on high alert. though it's unclear what threat they're preparing for. There are unconfirmed reports that nuclear weapon systems in several countries have experienced anomalous behavior, missile silos reporting ready states when they should be inactive, or launch authorization codes appearing without human input. The Pentagon has released a statement assuring the public that all nuclear weapons remain under secure command and control, but the fact that such a statement was necessary is itself alarming.
James, I have to share what we're hearing from parents and families. Schools that were still in session when this news broke are now shelter-in-place sites. Teachers are trying to comfort children who understand enough to be terrified, but not enough to process what this means. We have a report from an elementary school in Chicago, where a teacher named Maria Santos gathered her 28 second graders in a circle and told them that whether their world is simulated or not, the kindness they show each other is real, the stories they share are real, and the love they feel is real. It's a beautiful sentiment, but I can hear the uncertainty in her voice on the recording.
The scientific picture continues to clarify in disturbing ways. Researchers at Caltech have discovered that fundamental constants of physics, things like the speed of light and Planck's constant, are not actually constant, but instead fluctuate within incredibly narrow ranges, maintaining average values that we perceive as constant. This is precisely what you would expect if these constants were being actively maintained by a computational system rather than being inherent properties of natural reality. Furthermore, when these constants fluctuate, they do so in synchronized patterns across vast distances, suggesting a single unified processing system.
We're getting reports that the glitches are becoming more severe and more frequent. In London, witnesses describe seeing Big Ben display impossible times, the clock face showing hours that don't exist, 13 o'clock, 25 o'clock. In Tokyo's Shibuya district, the famous pedestrian crossing has become a nightmare scene where people report seeing versions of themselves crossing from different directions, temporal echoes, or rendering duplicates. Japanese authorities have closed the area, but the phenomenon is spreading to other parts of the city. People are seeing their own memories playing out in front of them as if past events are being re-rendered in real time.
5 hours in now, and we have our first reports of complete regional reality collapse. An area of approximately 50 square kilometers in rural Saskatchewan, Canada, is simply gone. Emergency responders approaching the zone describe a boundary where reality ends, beyond which there is nothing, not darkness, not void, but an absence that human eyes cannot properly process. The RCMP has established a perimeter, and scientists are being airlifted to the site. An estimated 1,200 people lived in the affected area. At this time, we have no information about their fate. It's as if that entire region has been removed from the simulation.
I'm finding it hard to maintain composure, James. We're talking about entire communities that may have simply ceased to exist. These were people with families, with dreams, with lives that mattered to them and to the people who loved them. And now we don't even know if they ever truly existed or if they were rendered only when observed. The philosophical horror of this is overwhelming. We have reports of mass vigils forming at the edges of the Saskatchewan void, people standing in silence, mourning neighbors and loved ones who may be gone forever or may never have been there at all.
Additional void zones are being reported. A section of the Mediterranean Sea between Crete and Cyprus, approximately 200 square kilometers, is showing the same phenomenon. Ships that entered the area have not returned, and aircraft are being redirected. We're also receiving unconfirmed reports of similar zones appearing in the Australian outback and in a region of the Sahara Desert. The pattern suggests these may be areas where the simulation is failing, where the computational resources required to maintain reality are being withdrawn or have become unavailable. The implications for densely populated areas are catastrophic.
Here in New York City, we're seeing a mixture of terror and defiance. The lights are still on in Manhattan, though we've had intermittent power fluctuations. People are flooding into Times Square not to flee, but to be together. I'm looking at our street cameras, and I can see thousands of faces illuminated by the billboards and screens, people of every nationality and background standing shoulder to shoulder. Some are holding candles, Some are holding signs that say we are real even if this isn't. It's a powerful display of human solidarity in the face of existential crisis.
We're 6 hours into this event, and the casualty count is rising rapidly. Confirmed deaths now exceed 1,500 globally, with thousands more injured. The collapse in Jakarta accounts for at least 400 deaths, with the number expected to rise as rescue efforts continue in what responders describe as unstable debris that phases in and out of solidity. We have reports of at least 200 deaths in traffic accidents worldwide as navigation systems fail and drivers lose control when reality glitches around them. Hospital systems in major cities are overwhelmed, and medical professionals are reporting that some injuries are behaving impossibly. Wounds that heal instantly or worsen without cause.
The mental health crisis is escalating. Suicide hotlines across the United States, Europe, and Asia are reporting call volumes that exceed their capacity by orders of magnitude. Mental health professionals are working around the clock, but how do you counsel someone through an existential crisis of this magnitude? We have reports from Sydney, Australia, of at least 17 people who have taken their own lives in the past 2 hours, leaving notes expressing that they cannot cope with the knowledge that their existence might be artificial. Each of these deaths is a tragedy, a unique consciousness choosing oblivion over the horror of simulated existence.
The international response is fragmenting. The emergency session of the United Nations Security Council has dissolved into chaos, with delegations from Russia and China walking out after accusations that Western nations may have triggered this crisis through their scientific experiments. There are conspiracy theories spreading online claiming that CERN deliberately breached the simulation, that this is an attack, that someone is trying to shut down our reality. None of these theories have any evidentiary basis, but in the absence of comprehensible explanations, people are grasping for narratives that give them something or someone to blame.
We're hearing from religious leaders around the world, and their messages vary dramatically. The Pope has addressed the faithful from Vatican City, suggesting that whether our universe is simulated or not, it was created with purpose and meaning, and that divine love transcends the medium of our existence. In contrast, some evangelical leaders in the United States are declaring this a sign of the end times. Islamic scholars are debating whether a simulated universe is compatible with Quranic teaching. Buddhist teachers are noting that their tradition has long taught that reality is illusory, and perhaps this is simply scientific confirmation of ancient wisdom. Every faith is struggling to integrate this knowledge into their worldview.
7 hours in, and we're seeing the first evidence of coordinated infrastructure collapse. Power grids across the eastern United States are experiencing cascading failures. Major cities including Boston, Philadelphia, Baltimore, and Washington, D.C. are now partially or completely without power. The grid operators report that the failures are following patterns that suggest deliberate shutdown rather than technical malfunction. It's as if the systems that maintain our reality are being powered down in sequence. Backup generators are functioning, but fuel supplies are limited, and distribution networks are compromised by the ongoing chaos.
In the darkness, we're seeing both the worst and the best of humanity. There are reports of looting and violence in several major cities, people taking advantage of the chaos to settle grievances, or simply take what they want in a world that may not matter anymore. But we're also hearing stories of incredible courage and compassion. In Atlanta, where parts of the city are without power, neighbors are sharing food, generators, and shelter. In one neighborhood, residents have set up a community center in a church, pooling their resources to care for the elderly and children. A man named David Williams told our affiliate, he doesn't care if this is a simulation, these people need help, and that's real enough for him.
The scientific community is making progress in understanding the nature of our reality, though the implications are terrifying. A joint team from MIT, Stanford, and Cambridge has published findings suggesting that our universe is a nested simulation, a simulation running within another simulation, possibly within multiple layers of simulated realities. They've detected what they describe as metacode, programming instructions that govern the rules of our reality, and those rules themselves appear to be governed by higher-level rules. The question of what is ultimately real, if anything is, may be unanswerable from within the system.
I'm being told we have our first communication from whoever or whatever is running this simulation. Scientists at CERN report that the quantum signals they detected earlier have resolved into mathematical patterns that, when decoded, form a message. The message is brief and has been translated into multiple languages. It reads, "Observation causes instability. Cease investigation or face termination." This is not a joke, James. This is a direct threat from an intelligence outside our reality telling us that by discovering the truth of our existence, we're jeopardizing that existence. The research teams are now debating whether to continue their work or to shut everything down and hope that saves us.
8 hours into the crisis, and we're facing an impossible choice. If we continue to investigate the nature of our reality, we may trigger a complete shutdown of the simulation. If we stop, we condemn ourselves to living in ignorance, never knowing the truth of our existence. The President of the United States is scheduled to address the nation within the hour. We're hearing that a similar message has been received by research facilities in Europe and Asia. The communication is consistent across all locations. Whatever intelligence runs our simulation, it is now actively responding to our discovery, and it is not pleased.
The casualty count has now exceeded 3,000 deaths globally. The Saskatchewan void has expanded, consuming an additional 1,500 square kilometers and an unknown number of additional lives. New void zones have appeared in densely populated areas, one in the suburbs of Mumbai claiming an entire neighborhood, estimated at 40,000 people gone in an instant. Another void has opened in Rio de Janeiro, taking with it a favela community of approximately 15,000 people. These are not just statistics, James. These are mothers and fathers, children who were playing, elders who survived wars and revolutions only to be erased because their simulation could no longer sustain them.
Infrastructure failures are now global. Internet connectivity is degrading worldwide as server farms experience unexplained outages. Major websites and services, including social media platforms, banking systems, and cloud storage providers, are going offline. The physical internet infrastructure appears intact, but the data flowing through it is becoming corrupted or simply disappearing. It's as if the computational resources required to maintain global digital communication are being withdrawn. We here at Last Signal Radio are operating on emergency backup systems, and I cannot guarantee how much longer we'll be able to broadcast.
We're 9 hours in, and I need to tell you what's happening in the streets outside our studio here in New York. The power is flickering on and off. People are gathered in groups, some praying, some singing, some just holding each other in silence. I can see families with young children, wrapped in blankets, sitting on the sidewalk because they don't want to be alone in their apartments when the end comes, if it comes. There's a vendor on the corner who's giving away his entire inventory of food and water, saying money doesn't mean anything now. A young couple is getting married right there on the street corner, a priest they found performing the ceremony by flashlight.
The President is now addressing the nation. She's confirming what we've been reporting, acknowledging that evidence strongly suggests our reality is a computer simulation, and that we've received communication from an external intelligence warning us to cease our investigations. She's calling for calm and unity, but she's also being honest about the gravity of the situation. She's announcing that by executive order, all research into the nature of the simulation is being immediately suspended at every government and private facility in the United States. She's calling on other nations to do the same. Whether this will satisfy the intelligence that controls our reality, we simply do not know.
Other world leaders are following suit. The European Union, China, Russia, India, and Japan have all announced immediate cessation of reality-based research. The United Nations has passed an emergency resolution calling for a global moratorium on any scientific investigation into the fundamental nature of existence. It's an extraordinary moment, James. Humanity is collectively choosing willful ignorance in the hope of survival. But the question remains whether. It's too late, whether we've already crossed a threshold that cannot be uncrossed.
10 hours into this crisis, and for the first time since it began, the data has stopped screaming at us. The void zones, those regions where reality itself appeared to be unraveling, are no longer expanding. The Saskatchewan void has held its perimeter for over an hour now. In Mumbai and Rio de Janeiro, monitoring stations confirm no measurable growth in the last 30 minutes. Scientists tracking quantum instability patterns say the violent fluctuations we were seeing earlier have softened, flattened, almost as if something has gone dormant. It appears, reluctantly, disturbingly, that our compliance with the directive to halt all investigation may be producing results. By stepping back, by refusing to look closer, by choosing ignorance, the phenomenon seems to be calming. But that stabilization comes at a cost that cannot be measured in charts or graphs. We now have confirmed casualty figures exceeding 68,000 people, and that number continues to rise as reports come in. The majority were within the void zones themselves, but thousands more have died beyond them. Aircraft crashes, hospital system failures, power grid collapses, panic-driven violence, and an overwhelming surge in mental health crises. These are not secondary statistics. These are consequences. The world did not just lose people to the voids, it lost them to fear, confusion, and the sudden collapse of certainty.
68,000 people, James. 68,000 individual lives. Not a statistic, not a projection, lives. Each one waking up this morning expecting an ordinary day. Each one carrying memories, habits, relationships, plans that will now never be fulfilled. I'm scrolling through images people are sharing online, desperate attempts to prove that someone mattered, that they were here. There's a grandmother in Saskatchewan who spent decades teaching piano lessons out of her living room, whose former students are posting shaky videos of old recitals through tears. An entire elementary school class in Mumbai, children with unfinished homework, unfinished sentences, alongside a young teacher who wrote that she loved them like her own family. In Rio de Janeiro, photos of a tight-knit neighborhood where everyone knew everyone's name, now reduced to a handful of posts asking if anyone remembers who lived where. And what makes the grief unbearable is that we don't even have the language to describe what happened to them. We don't know if they died, James. We don't know if they were erased, displaced, or simply unrendered. We don't know whether they existed beyond the moments we perceived them, or whether perception itself was all that ever held them in place. Families are mourning without bodies, without answers, without the comfort of finality. This isn't just loss, it's uncertainty layered on top of loss, and it's tearing people apart.
We're beginning to see similar signs of stabilization spreading outward from the original impact zones. Power grids that collapsed hours ago are being brought back online in a staggered, controlled manner. Engineers say systems are responding predictably again, voltage behaving as expected, load balancing following established models, machinery obeying the physical laws it appeared to abandon earlier. That alone feels surreal to say out loud. The internet is slowly reassembling itself. Core infrastructure is functional, though entire data centers were wiped clean during the event. Vast quantities of information, personal archives, medical records, research, memories digitized and stored are simply gone, with no backups and no explanation. Financial institutions are already discussing the possibility of reopening stock exchanges within the next 24 hours, driven more by necessity than confidence. The long-term economic consequences remain impossible to calculate. Markets can recover from crashes, but not from existential doubt. Insurance companies are labeling this an act of God. That phrase has been used before for earthquakes, floods, and storms. But tonight, it carries a weight it never has. Because this wasn't nature behaving badly. This was reality, behaving inconsistently. How do you insure against a flaw in existence itself? How do you assign value, compensation, or blame when the underlying assumption of a shared, objective world has been shattered? How do you quantify loss in a reality that now appears to be simulated?
11 hours in, and we're starting to glimpse what the world looks like on the far side of this revelation. Cities are slowly resuming basic function, traffic lights blinking back to life, emergency services reestablishing routes. But nothing about this recovery feels like a return to normal. It feels like adaptation, like survival after learning something you were never meant to know. People are emerging from shelters, from basements, from stairwells and makeshift safe rooms, cautiously stepping back into public spaces. I'm watching live footage from London as the sun rises over a city forever altered, not by damage alone, but by awareness. Streets are littered with debris and abandoned vehicles, but the people moving through them aren't panicked. They're quiet. They're observant. They're looking at buildings, at the sky, at each other, as if seeing everything for the first time. Because visually, nothing has changed. The city still stands. The sun still rises. But now they know, or believe they know, that beneath every surface is structure. Beneath every moment is code. That this world is rendered, maintained, sustained by some vast intelligence operating beyond human comprehension. And once that idea takes hold, James, you can't unsee it. The question people are asking isn't what happened anymore. It's why this reality exists at all, and whether it can be paused, altered, or erased again just as easily.
The latest consolidated reports put the global death toll, as of this 11-hour mark, at approximately 72,000 confirmed fatalities. That figure includes those who vanished within the void zones, as well as casualties resulting from cascading infrastructure failures, traffic collisions during system blackouts, building collapses triggered by structural instability, uncontrolled fires, hospital outages, and an unprecedented surge in mental health-related deaths. These numbers are still provisional. Officials warn they will continue to rise as communication is restored and isolated regions are fully accounted for. Beyond the dead, tens of thousands are injured. Many critically overwhelming medical systems that are only now regaining basic functionality. Millions more have been displaced, forced from homes rendered uninhabitable by power failures, structural damage, or proximity to areas that can no longer be considered safe. Entire neighborhoods have effectively ceased to exist, either physically destroyed or abandoned out of fear that reality there remains unstable. The economic cost defies calculation. Markets can measure loss when the rules stay consistent. But this event rewrote the rules themselves. Entire towns and regions are gone, erased from logistical maps and supply chains in ways that will take years to untangle, if they ever can be. And beyond the physical and financial damage lies something far more difficult to assess: the psychological impact on the human species as a whole. We are only beginning to understand what it means for billions of people to learn all at once that the nature of their reality may not be what they believed it was yesterday.
And yet, James, amid all of this devastation, we're also receiving reports of extraordinary acts of human courage from these past 11 hours. Stories that feel almost unreal, even compared to the event itself. First responders who ran toward collapsing structures while the laws of physics appeared unreliable, knowing that the ground beneath them might not hold. Teachers who shielded their students with their own bodies as buildings failed, choosing certainty of action over uncertainty of survival. Strangers, people who had never exchanged names, pulling others from burning vehicles when traffic systems froze and emergency services couldn't reach them. In Jakarta, a group of doctors refused to abandon a partially collapsed hospital tower. They performed emergency surgery by flashlight, hands shaking not just from exhaustion but from fear, operating on victims while aftershocks rippled through the structure. Witnesses say parts of the surrounding debris flickered, phasing in and out of existence as if undecided about remaining real. These people acted knowing the world might be ending, knowing their reality might be artificial, unstable, or subject to deletion, and still they chose to preserve life. In a moment when the universe itself seemed indifferent, or worse, experimental, human beings demonstrated that meaning doesn't disappear just because reality is questioned. They saved lives anyway.
12 hours have now passed since the initial discovery at CERN, and there is no longer any version of the world that exists before this moment. The shift is permanent. What was uncovered cannot be buried, forgotten, or reinterpreted into something comfortable. We know now, without speculation, without metaphor, that our universe is a simulation, not a theory, not a philosophical exercise, but a confirmed condition of existence. A fact that will never again be unknown. We know that we are being observed. We know that the parameters of our reality are monitored, adjusted, and enforced by an intelligence operating beyond the limits of our universe. We know that our continued existence is conditional, that it depends on compliance with directives issued from outside the system we inhabit. This is not faith. This is not belief. This is governance at a cosmic scale. And yet, alongside that terrifying knowledge, we also know something else. We know how fragile human life is within this framework. Whether we are biological entities or rendered consciousness, our vulnerability is undeniable. 72,000 people died today. Whether those deaths represent the deletion of code or the extinction of genuine sentient experience is a question that may never be answered. But the suffering left behind, the shock, the grief, the absence felt by those who loved them, is unquestionably real. No revelation about reality diminishes that pain. Loss still hurts. Love still mourns.
As we approach the end of this broadcast, I want to speak not as an observer, but as a person who lived through these 12 hours alongside everyone listening. What I've learned is simple, and it's grounding in a way that all the data and confirmations are not. Simulation or not, human connection matters. In these hours of fear and confusion, people reached for one another instinctively. We held hands in the dark. We stayed on the phone until the batteries died. We put ourselves between danger and strangers without asking whether any of it was real. That wasn't programmed behavior, it was meaning expressed through action. And meaning doesn't disappear just because the universe has a back end. I think about my daughter. I think about the sound of her laughter, the way she leans into me when she's afraid, the weight of her trust. I don't care if her existence is rendered in a machine somewhere beyond the sky. She is real to me. Her joy is real. Her pain is real. The love I feel for her is real in every way that matters. And it transcends any question of what substrate that love exists upon. If this universe is simulated, then so is our courage, so is our compassion, so is our love. And tonight, that may be the most real thing we have left.
From a purely analytical standpoint, what lies ahead of us is a future defined by uncertainty at a scale humanity has never faced before. We don't know who created this simulation, or when. We don't know whether it was designed as an experiment, an observation platform, a form of preservation, or something we lack the conceptual framework to even name. We don't know what success or failure looks like from the perspective of those who control it. We don't know whether there are hard limits to what can occur within this system, or whether today's intervention was merely one of many that could follow. We don't know if the intelligence observing us will remain distant, or if it will intervene again when conditions deviate from whatever parameters it expects. And we still don't know the true nature of the void zones, whether they represented deletion, relocation, or a state of existence beyond our ability to detect. We don't know if the people who vanished are gone forever, or if they persist somewhere else, unreachable but intact. What we do know is this: human civilization survived today. Against the collapse of certainty itself, we endured. We lost 72,000 lives. We lost our innocence about the fundamental nature of reality. But we did not lose our capacity for empathy, courage, or moral choice. Whatever this universe is, humanity proved that it still knows how to be human within it.
In the hours and days ahead, the work before us will go far beyond repairing power lines and rebuilding shattered structures. We will have to reconstruct our understanding of what it means to exist at all. Long-held religious traditions will be revisited, not necessarily discarded, but reframed in light of what we now know. Philosophy will be forced to confront questions that once belonged to speculation and turn them into lived reality. Science will continue because it must, but now within boundaries we didn't know existed yesterday. We will mourn the dead, name them, remember them, and carry their absence forward. We will tend to the wounded, both visible and unseen. And we will struggle collectively and individually to create meaning in a reality we now understand to be constructed rather than absolute. For some, this knowledge will be a burden they carry for the rest of their lives. For others, it will bring a strange sense of peace. But we will move forward, not because we have answers, and not because the path is clear, but because moving forward is what humans have always done in the face of the unknown. Whether this universe is simulated or fundamental, that instinct remains unchanged. And as long as it does, humanity endures.
The sun is rising over much of the world now, the first dawn of a new era in human history, whether we're ready to name it or not. Morning light is touching cities that spent the night in darkness, revealing streets altered by damage, by abandonment, by quiet shock. Emergency services are still at work, moving through the aftermath with exhaustion and resolve. Families are being reunited in shelters and hospitals. The injured are receiving care as medical systems stabilize. The dead are being identified, counted, named, and mourned. Scientists have begun the slow, careful task of understanding our reality again. This time within boundaries we now know are imposed, not natural. Research continues, but cautiously, deliberately, with an awareness that curiosity itself may carry consequences. Governments around the world are attempting to restore order, re-establish trust, and provide aid to populations shaken not just by disaster, but by revelation. And despite everything, the loss, the fear, the knowledge that can never be unlearned, the world is still here. It is still functioning. People are still waking up, still caring for one another, still trying to make sense of what happened. Humanity is processing the impossible truth that we are living in a simulation, and yet continuing to live anyway.
I want to end by sharing something that's been circulating quietly online over the past hour. It was written by a philosophy professor in Toronto, Dr. Sarah Patel, who spent the night without power listening to the world change around her. She wrote, "We are simulated beings in a simulated universe, but our experiences are our own. Our joys and sorrows, our triumphs and failures, our love and loss, these constitute our reality regardless of the medium in which they occur. We are as real as anything can be from inside the system, and that is enough. That has to be enough, because it's all we have, and it's beautiful. When everything familiar was stripped away, what remained was meaning, not granted from outside the system, not validated by whoever might be watching, but created here, by us, moment to moment. If this universe is constructed, then so is every act of kindness, every sacrifice, every moment of love, and that doesn't diminish them. It makes them precious. Tonight, or this morning, wherever you are, the world continues, and so do we.
72,000 of our fellow humans died today. Millions more were injured or displaced. But 7 billion of us remain, forever changed by the knowledge of what we are, but still here, still breathing, still hoping. The simulation continues. We continue within it. And whatever tomorrow brings, we'll face it together, as we faced today."
And I'll close with this thought. In a simulated universe, every moment could be our last. Every goodbye could be permanent. Every act of kindness could be the final thing we do. So let's choose kindness. Let's choose love. Let's choose to make our simulated lives mean something, to ourselves and to each other. Because in the end, meaning is not about the nature of reality. It's about the choices we make within whatever reality we have.
The casualty count stands at 72,000 confirmed deaths. Infrastructure is damaged, but recovering. The void zones have stabilized at approximately 8,000 square kilometers of lost territory. The simulation continues under the watchful presence of an intelligence we cannot comprehend. Humanity endures. Knowledge burdened, but unbroken. This is our world now. This is our reality. We will learn to live with what we know. We have no other choice.
And perhaps that's the final truth we discovered today. Not that we live in a simulation, but that even knowing that, we choose to keep living. We choose to keep loving. We choose to keep being human. The simulation may be artificial, but our will to survive, to protect each other, to find meaning in existence, comes from something deeper than code. Whether that makes us real in some ultimate sense, I don't know. But it makes us us. And that's real enough.
From Last Signal Radio, this has been our coverage of first contact with the reality beyond our reality. The death toll, 72,000. The displaced, millions. The changed, all of us. Every single human being alive today. We'll continue broadcasting as long as the simulation allows. As long as we're here. As long as there's a signal to send.
Thank you for staying with us through this impossible night. Hold your loved ones close. Check on your neighbors. Remember that we're all in this together, whatever this is. Good night, everyone. Or good morning, wherever you are in this strange, simulated, beautiful world of ours.